Welcome back. Welcome back. Thank you guys for showing up again. Thanks for listening. Thanks for sharing, liking, and being there. I want to be there for you guys just as much as you're there for me. Yesterday's episode was about America, and I think we're kind of going to stay on that topic, maybe for this episode, maybe for a couple more. I don't think really there's enough focus on our country right now. Everybody wants to focus on what's going on foreign policy wise, what's going on in the world, which is understandable. But I mean, let's face it, we got struggles at home. We got problems at home, and I think that's what needs to be addressed. As great as it feels to be America's police, we are not the world police. Okay, we have an American policing problem here, rather than needing to be a world policing problem. And our policing problem in America isn't necessarily a policing problem with the way they police, even though there is a problem with that. We'll delve into that in another topic. My problem with police in America today is that you're arresting average Joes for crimes committed, which is understandable. It's the law. But why aren't we arresting politicians? Why aren't we arresting business owners? Why aren't we arresting billionaires? That's the question. That's the problem I have with the policing in America. The policing of the world, well, we haven't been good world police either because, well, there's an active genocide happening across the world. We're bombing 8 different countries. We're threatening Iran with military conflict. So, I mean, I guess if you understand how money works, you kind of understand why the conflicts arise in places like Venezuela and Iran. They're heavy resource rich countries, and they sell to our adversaries. So, selling to our adversaries is a problem when you're America and your system is built on a petrodollar, where your dollar is perpetuated by oil. So, for years, America has forced countries to sell their resources for American currency, which props up our dollar, which makes it the reserve currency in the world. However, the Federal Reserve has made itself a printing press, which by any means, if any of us was to print money out of thin air, we would go to prison for it. But apparently the Federal Reserve just gets to print it out of thin air with nothing to back it, and it's just a fiat currency. We're just, that's what the dollar is. It's a fiat currency, and somehow the world's bought into it being the world reserve currency. And there's countries around the world that are waking up and saying, hey, you guys have a spending problem. And that's a problem when we rely on your currency for things. So they start splitting up and they start making different plans, and that scares Americans. It scares politicians and it scares people in power because, well, they have always seemed to feel that they're untouchable over here across the pond, as they call it. But America isn't untouchable. It's also not perfect, but it's a beautiful place. There's plenty of places of beauty. Don't let the hate and the separation between all of us make us forget how beautiful this country really is. Thank you guys for coming. Thanks for the likes. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for the comments. Please, if there's any topics you want to delve into, feel free to mention them. And I'll get into anything. I want to learn things with you. I want you to learn things, they're not going to teach us. You're not going to see on the daily news, or you're not going to hear on your normal radio. So it's definitely not going to be in your music, and it's definitely not going to be on your television, because the truth is something they don't ever let out. I mean, we see what they're doing to people like Candace Owens. She's just trying to get to the truth of what happened to Charlie Kirk. We can dive in on that if you want to. That's a pretty hot topic in America right now. There's an active leftist campaign going on, and it's putting people in danger. I mean, I'm not in any way condoning the behavior of ICE agents across the country. I made my stance on that. They do have a job to do, so hopefully they do that job as professionally as they can. And when you make mistakes, you're held accountable for it. We won't be surprised if a government official is not held accountable for something. But that's why we see protesting. And, it's that kind of stuff that pulls us out into the street and makes us realize, there's a problem with what's happening in our country. And it's not just our daily problems. It's not just the fact that we struggle to pay our bills. It's not the fact that we're being taxed left and right no matter what we do. But there's a bigger problem. There's a power problem that these people in power just don't have to face any accountability. They can just throw dollars at their problem and then it disappears. So, there's kind of two sides to America. There's this beautiful idea that America should be, and then there's the reality of what America is. But what America does have is a bunch of beautiful places and a bunch of beautiful people, and that's what we're here for. America, what a beautiful place, huh? It really is. There's a lot of things here that we can be grateful for. Freedom of speech, which tends to be sliding a little bit, but we're thankful for that. We're thankful for our men and women and fathers and sons and grandparents who fought for this country to get us where we are. They went through a lot. There was a lot of wars fought, a lot of battles fought to get us here, and we became the most powerful nation on the planet, essentially. And maybe that's gotten to Americans' heads a little too much. Not so much ours, because we live in the real world where we still struggle to pay our bills, and we're making less than what it costs to live. But that's a different story. It'll fall into all of this category today, anyways, because we're just gonna cover America in general. It's a good place to live. We got freedoms. You can walk around, you can drive. A lot of restrictions on all that stuff, but for the most part, you can do stuff with your family if you want. If you can afford to take vacations, you take vacations. If you can afford to do things, of course you do things. Right now it's a little harder to afford to do things because everything's going up except the amount of money that we make. Surprise, surprise. I don't, inflation is one of those things that comes from them creating money out of thin air. If you constantly keep creating money, then the money that we have obviously doesn't have the same value, and that's what's going on. There's a banking system that's broken. There's a political system that's torn apart, and there's a war machine that's reaping all the benefits. So, there's a handful of companies that absorbs all the assets in America. I think they said BlackRock has like $12 trillion in assets. 12 trillion. That's let's see, our GDP in America is something like $38 trillion. So 12 trillion, that's almost a fourth of our entire economy that BlackRock owns, And then they get sweetheart deals from the bank to give them liquidity so they can go acquire more assets on cheap interest. And then any debt that follows, that just goes to Americans. That's what we pay. We pay the interest on all the money they get to play with. Our tax money probably doesn't even cover the interest at this point. So, then we ask who we're even borrowing money from, because I'm pretty sure we gave Congress the power to print our own American currency so that we were separate from the world, not give it to some central banks that play asset forfeiture and seizing across the world, because that's what they do. They treat countries like assets, and they go in and they steal their resources and they put them on their books, and their resources become our assets, and that's how the system works. We got such a system for the world, but where's the system for us? Where's the system for Americans? Where's our education system at? Where is our political environment? We're shooting political commentators now. Charlie Kirk got shot, and really that's all he was a political commentator. He debated people and he wanted the truth. He had a strong following. It seems to be the trend that when you have a bunch of males following you, that you grab the attention of people who don't like that. Because at the end of the day, it's strong and informed males that can change the world. And that's what it takes. It takes being informed. It takes turning off the TV and sports and the music and everything that entertains you. And that's hard because that's what they've groomed us on our whole lives. You know, we got a Super Bowl coming up. I think there'll be like something like 20 million people watching it, maybe 50 million, maybe 100 million. And that's great. You know, sports are great. You know, Sam Darnold's that story of Sam Darnold making it to the Super Bowl after he got thrown out by Minnesota. I mean, it's a story. You know, when you set your mind to something, you can accomplish anything you want, and he is that story. You know, though America kind of threw him under the bus when he lost in public to Detroit, and Minnesota moved on, and they went and got McCarthy, and Sam Darnold went to Seattle, and here Sam Darnold is going to play in the biggest stage in sports, period. I mean, it's a spectacle in America. Across the world, it's not as big. Soccer is a little bit bigger, but you know, in America, this is the pinnacle of sports right here. The Super Bowl. It's what every kid dreams of going. It's what people spend their lives chasing. You know, so it's great. You know, entertainment's great, sports is great, but at the end of the day, like, it's all a distraction. It's a distraction to keep you from learning something new. And that's what I challenge myself to do every day. I challenge myself to learn something new every single day, no matter how crazy it is, no matter how out of this world it seems. I want to learn something new because everything we know and everything we do is only because somebody before us has told us to do it, or somebody before us is giving their foreknowledge. But what about the knowledge that you seek? What about the things that you find? What do you search for? And in America, I feel like we have this problem that we just don't search for anything anymore. That we take the news that's given to us as whole, and it's not. It's corporate bought media owned by a handful of people that want only the news that they want to be out. I showed that in my first episode or second episode about propaganda, and that they only tell us what they want us to know. They only show us what they want us to see. There's so much going on behind the scenes, and nobody knows a thing about it because, well, we got to work 40 to 60 hours to make it. Our partners are going to work now, and so we got two people at home working, and our kids are in school for 8 hours a day, and then they get at home, and then all of us are entertained by our cell phones and TV and music, and we don't even really know our families anymore. And that's a problem. That's why families are so separate. You know, that was part of their plan, was to destroy the family in America, because strong families and strong bonds is what we fight for. When we're friendly with our neighbors and we know everybody, we're willing to fight for them. But what are we willing to fight? Each other? Getting angry at each other? Road raging at each other? Fighting at fast food restaurants with each other? Fighting in restaurants with each other? Fighting in stores with each other? All that anger and all that hatred should be put towards the actual problem in this country, which is our politicians, our news medias, our doctors, our teachers. Where were they at during COVID? These doctors who swore an oath to be for the betterment of humanity, essentially. You know, we can read the doctor's oath. I'm sure it's online. But at the end of the day, where were you guys fighting when they wanted to shove these vaccines down our throats? You know, where were you when they were creating this pandemic to shut everything down for the largest wealth transfer since 2008? And it transfers from the middle class to the elite because they don't want a middle class. They want you so poor that you're relying on the government to survive. And if you're not poor, then they want you on the other side of it, and they want you rich, where you're creating policies and spending money to create policies to keep people poor. to send our jobs overseas. That's where our middle class went. Our middle class disappeared when manufacturing disappeared because you had these giant global trade agreements and you're strangling manufacturing companies with emissions laws and ozone protection. Meanwhile, billionaires are buying jets and yachts. They just had that meeting over in Davos, at Davos. All the richest people in the world showing you that they still have no fucking idea of what normal people are going through. Playing games with our lives like they have a right to do so. You know, it's amazing to me the inequality that comes from these people that own these giant corporations, okay? You know, I think they said the lady at CBS is going to make something like 30 something $million a year. 30 something million. What is the lowest news reporter there work? What do they make? 70,000 a year? 100,000 a year? What's the percentage of that 32 million? The CEO of McDonald's probably makes like 20 million a year. And the average worker at McDonald's makes what, $16 an hour? What's that percentage? When you're making that money, because those people are the ones there selling your product. The product that you sell for billions, the people who are selling it are the ones being paid the least amount. And they're the ones dealing with it. Dealing with the rude customers, the disrespect, the attitude, while you guys don't deal with nothing. What do you deal with? Boardroom meetings? A board that breathes down your neck when you aren't showing the right profit gains? That's what you got to deal with for $20 million a year? How do we poison Americans more for cheaper so I can make more money? How does McDonald's in the UK, their French fries have 3 ingredients? Salt if you want it, so 2, maybe 3 if you want salt on your fries. And in America, we got 17 different ingredients in our fries. That's what our tax money gets? That's our regulation? That's our defense against things like COVID, against poisoning our food, then wondering why Americans are in the worst health that they've ever been? Well, I don't know. They did a whole study on processed foods years ago. They did a whole study on GMOs. The mice that ate the GMOs were growing disfigured, had big stomachs, plump eyes. They couldn't breed anymore. These were studies that were done in the 90s into the early 2000s. But you know what? They had you watching sports. They had you listening to music. They had you fighting over Biggie and Tupac. While they were systematically destroying our food, our education, our infrastructure. We spend trillions of dollars everywhere in the world but at home. Our roads are shit. Feel like you're going to blow a tire out when you hit a pothole. There's homeless veterans sleeping on every street in America. Homeless veterans. Never thought you'd have to say that in a country that fought to get to be this country that it is. Their veterans are sleeping on the street. I'm sorry, if you're a veteran, there's no reason why you should be homeless. I don't care what your problem is. You should not be homeless. They should have a place for you, even in the worst mental state that you're in, whether you're an alcoholic or a drug addict because you were a vet, you should be taken care of, period. I don't care, period. That goes without question to me. I think that if you fight and sacrifice what could be your life for this country, that it doesn't matter what you do for the rest of your life, you should be taken care of. They should have a place for you to go if there's nowhere for you to go. If you've gambled away your money, if you drank it away, if you've drugged it away, it doesn't matter. There should be a place for you to go. There should be a place for you to sleep so you're not outside freezing to death in the cold when you served our country. For their bullshit reasons to begin with. We touched on that in the last episode. We talked about 9/11. Let's talk about 9/11. Okay? 9/11 happened because they said Osama bin Laden set it up and he was from Afghanistan and they infiltrated us and had this big old plot and that's how they got it out. That's the story. Muslims hijacked planes, flew them into buildings, flew it into the Pentagon, the most protected place on the planet. You drove a plane into the front of it. Like, hey, valet parking's not here. Let's just drive a fucking Boeing right into the front window. And nobody stopped it. No missile defense systems, no jets. Our $1 trillion budgets, all these private contractors, all this technology that can spy on all of us, but you didn't know that somebody was going to fly planes into a building. You couldn't stop 2 planes that were in the air, 4 planes. You couldn't scramble jets. Where were the jets? Where were the Air Force bases that were around these areas? Where were they? And that's just the at-home part. Let's not forget that we went to war with Iraq after 9/11. Now, I'm not sure who's keeping tabs here, but didn't they just tell us that this guy was from Afghanistan? So why the fuck are we going to Iraq? Because he has weapons of mass destruction? A lot of countries do. North Korea does. Israel does. Russia does. China does. There's several countries with nuclear weapons. Iran. That's the whole argument. They don't want Iran to have nuclear weapons. Why? So you guys can't invade their fucking country anymore? So you can't threaten to wipe them off the map for their resources? It seems at this point, having nuclear capabilities is the only way from having some giant tyrannical government coming in and saying you need to use a central bank for your fucking resources. Because all of the countries we've been to war with since 2001, most people don't know, are places that don't have central banks. Why is that? I wonder. But I'm just a delivery guy, I'm just a delivery guy. I just notice things. I just ask questions. And that's the problem. We don't ask questions. We go to school and we take what they teach us and we watch the news and we watch our TV and we watch sports and we listen to music, but we never ask why. Why is this what's on the news? Why is this the TV show they allow us to watch? Why is this the music they allow to go through? There was just a huge thing, an uproar about these guys listening to that NHH by Kanye West. I didn't even know the song existed, but okay. It's a song. It's a fucking song. And if you actually listen to the song, it's a song that talks about how you're not allowed to say things. How they censor you for talking about certain things. How when you veer from what they want the world to see, you're a problem. You're a problem. Now, people have their own ideas of what that agenda is across the world. I don't really get into that. I don't really care. My problems are with what happens here in America. Do the problems outside of what happens in America matter to America? I mean, I guess they do, but who's really going to invade this country? Like, let's be serious. Are they going to use foot soldiers? Where are they going to come in? Louisiana? Please. South Florida? Please. Texas? Yeah, right. Maybe California. They might get in through the back door. Wink, wink. But really, where would they attack Americans? What did they say? There's 250 million guns in circulation right now. That's like 4 guns for every person that can actually shoot guns in America. So that's what the Second Amendment is. Nobody's going to use it to try and overthrow a government because, well, we know they will kill us. Stop playing. The only way to beat these people is with money. The only way to beat these people is to threaten their system. It isn't about violence. Protesting's cool. Yeah, your voice is heard. But the real weapon is your money. The real weapon is your dependency on the government. The real weapon is buying from your local stores instead of going to Walmart and Target and Meijer's. Go to your local stores. Buy vegetables from farmers. You think the Whole Foods market sells Whole Foods? Whole Foods is a fucking joke. You can grow your own Whole Foods. But we don't want to. We want to eat McDonald's. We want to go to restaurants where other people cook our food, where they don't even want to be there. So you're eating negative energy food in the first place. And then you wonder why you have all this negative energy. Because you are what you eat. And you're eating poison. And you're eating toxic shit. You're poisoning your mind with what's on TV. You're poisoning your mind with the music you listen to. You're poisoning the beautiful creation that God made with distraction, with lust. I just told somebody the other day that, sex and working is great, but that's like the lowest point of living that there is. Neanderthals had sex and survived. That's the lowest point of living that there is. And it seems like that's kind of the era that Americans are stuck in. The lowest primate survivable possible. We have sex and we go to work. And then we are entertained by whatever they throw at us. Give me some music. Give me some sports. Give me some movies. Give me some fast food. Give me some more poison for my mind. We have to wake up. As we talk about accountability, we have to be accountable for ourselves. What did you learn today? What did you do that progressed you as a human being today? What did you do that made you learn something new? When's the last time you learned something new? When's the last time you searched for something different? Our algorithms are based on things that you look at. So if you don't actively search for something new, you're only going to see the things that you already see every day. You're only going to know the things that you already know. You're only going to know more about the things you already know instead of knowing more about everything or anything for that matter. Why is our banking system built the way it is? Why are mortgages set the way they are? Those are real questions. How does money work? Who's in charge of our education system? Who's in charge of being the gatekeepers to music? Who are the gatekeepers to movies? Who are the gatekeepers to information? Those are real questions. Who doesn't want us to know what? And we don't make it hard for them. We make it easy because we eat their shit. Just give us the manja, man. Give us the shit. We want the shit, man. We want music. We want sports. We want entertainment. We want to be distracted. We want to be taxed. You want to go to work? I want you to tax me federally. I want you to tax me locally. I want you to tax me when I go to the store. I want you to tax me when I buy a car. I want you to tax me when I renew my fucking plates. There's something to learn about. Why are we being taxed 8 different times? Oh, because we're watching football. Because we're watching basketball. Because we never asked any questions. You know, our parents, I don't want to say they were dumb, but Jesus Christ, how did we get here? And the generation before that was so loyal to the idea that the government would never do anything to harm you or never do anything to impede your growth was a myth. The government has been actively destroying the middle class for the last 50 years. $50 years ago, the percentage of men under 30 that owned a home was like 60%. It's 15% now. Guess that depends what your goals are. If you think buying a house is like the American dream, owning a home, I guess, that's a fraud in itself. We're going to spend a whole episode on how I feel about that. But I guess if you're going to play the credit game and the liquidity game, that's something you have to have. You know, it's an asset you're going to be paying for 30 years, an asset that you're paying interest on. And it's not flat interest. Like the money for the first 10 years that you're paying on your mortgage mostly goes to interest anyways. Why is the beginning of the money I'm paying on interest? Well, because if you paid off the principal faster, then they would make less in interest. That's how that works. So if I'm telling you your mortgage is $900, then, you know, 600 of it's going to go towards interest and 300 is going to go towards the principal. And as your mortgage goes on into that 30 years, the gap between the two closes, and then you'll be paying more on the principal than the interest, and then the principal until it's paid off. So you've already paid your interest before you've even paid off the house. So if something happens after 15 years and, oh, I paid all this money, well, yeah, that was only interest and you can't afford to pay us, so fuck off. It's our house and we're going to sell it now. The American dream for you right there in owning a home. I preferably rent. I love the idea that if something breaks in my house, somebody else is going to fix it. So that's beautiful. The roof leaks, okay, it's not my problem. Fix it. Pipe breaks, not my problem. Fix it. Washer and dryer breaks, fix it. Refrigerator breaks, fix it. Stove breaks, fix it. What do I got to worry about? Mowing the lawn? Okay, I can do that. Paying my utilities, I can do that. What don't I get? Don't get to borrow money from you? Don't get to be put in debt by you? That's fine. Being a debt slave is exactly what you want. You want people making minimal amounts of money and then borrowing the difference from you so they owe you interest on it. And this is the system in America that needs to change. This is what we need to be informed for. A well-informed public is the only thing that keeps a democracy going. This propaganda tool they have, this hating each other that we're doing because of what the news is telling us, that's exactly what they want. They want you fighting over whether he was justified in shooting him or not justified. Who gives a fuck? That's not for you to determine on Facebook. That's not for you to determine on Twitter. They'll determine that in the law. That's what that's for. Your voice hating each other ain't going to change that. But let's fight each other about it. Let's argue about it. That we're all of a sudden experts, okay? Are you experts in federal law? Are you experts in the ICE agreement that they have with the government? Because I'm not even fucking close. But I know that nobody should die on the streets. I know that if you're going to get sentenced for a life execution, it should happen in a courtroom with 12 jurors. Not no plea agreement for death. Not no plea agreement for a life sentence. Those are other things we can trickle down on episodes. How plea deals are unconstitutional. Yet that's what they want you to do. You're not supposed to face any charges unless 12 people say that you're guilty. America has so much to offer, and it can be such a beautiful thing. If only we could come together as Americans and realize that's what we are, is Americans. Nothing more, nothing less. We're Americans with a beautiful country and a beautiful place and beautiful people with hope, with inspiration, with strength, with dignity. And those are the people that need to come together, not fighting over opinionated topics. Who cares? Let's come together to fix the facts. The facts are this: we make less, we pay more, we're taxed too much, and we don't have no privacy. Those are the facts. And every human being that hears this is suffering from that. You don't even have to live in America to be suffering from that. That's everywhere in the world, because there's a group of individuals that runs this shit. They party together. They eat together. Their kids go to school together. It's one giant club and we're not part of it. Well, you can't be part of it because you're not even informed enough to know it exists. Learn something. Chase your dreams. Discover something new. Challenge yourself. Be the change that you want to see. If you want change in the world, it has to start with you. It has to start with where you're spending your money, where you're spending your time. Learn something. Read something. Chase something new. Stop eating poison. Eat real food. Shop at your local stores. Stop giving money to these billionaires. Start investing in yourself, your health, your mental awareness, your kids' future. We're not going to be here to see the consequences of this shit, but our kids will be. If you're willing to defend them against a bully, or willing to stand up because somebody disrespects your kids, well, there's a whole country disrespecting their future right now because we're selling them out in debt. America has so many beautiful places and so many beautiful people that I know that we can come together and fix it. Thank you guys for coming. Thanks for liking. Thanks for sharing. Comment. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you want to learn about. You know, I love this country. I love being here. I've been here every day of my life since I was born. I was born in Texas. 40 years I've been here. I've seen a lot of things. I've dealt with a lot of people. I see people every day of my life, and I know that a lot of people feel the way that I just said. So like, share, subscribe. Come back next time. We'll see you then.
Every day is a learning experience, man. Every day, man. I'm just thankful that I'm able to live through the day, and I'm still able to find joy in this thing called life.